Carl Kerby with Reasons for Hope, and today we're going to tackle a topic that I think is a lot of fun, quite frankly. We live in a world that wants to try and tell us that, well, you can get something from nothing. Well, we're going to debunk that claim today. Now, we're going to start off at a museum that I actually enjoy. I've been there, and it's a really neat museum. But on the inside of it, there's a sign that I want you to see because the teaching is very, very important. And it says this: science without physical evidence is opinion. And opinion is not science, even if it's the opinion of a scientist. So keep that in mind. Science without physical evidence is opinion. And it doesn't matter who's saying this. So let's keep that in mind. And now let's address this issue of getting something from nothing. Reading Hebrews 11:3 here says, by faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what we see was not made out of things that are visible. And many times people attack Christians and say, see, all you guys have is faith. Well, hold up. Let's let a non-Christian define faith here for a second. Bertrand Russell said that faith is a firm belief in something for which there is no evidence. Is that biblical faith? I'm going to challenge you and say, no, it is not. Let me show you a short video here to just kind of illustrate what biblical faith is.
Faith, the final frontier. These are the voyages. No, it's ridiculous, although that's where most people take this topic, to science fiction. Faith. What is it really? A magic feeling that we get to help us through tough times? A mystical bridge between fact and fiction? Is it really blind? Is it a word we use when we can't explain ourselves? Is it real on any level? Well, let's investigate. Hypothetical. A person says to you, I sure do wish I could believe in millibuggins like you do, I just don't have that kind of faith. Well, what that person is really saying is that millibuggins aren't real, and you are the type of person who believes in unreal things, and it takes this strange faith thing that not many other people have for you to get there. Okay, in the nicest way possible then, this person is calling you insane, or at best just a little nutty. So you have this odd capability of believing in something you desperately wish to be true, but you just can't be sure if it is. However, since it makes you feel better, it's worth it. For you. Well, that pretty much sums up what faith means to most people. In other words, the stronger your faith, the more ridiculous the belief must be, because after all, a little faith helps you believe in things that probably aren't true, so then a really powerful faith will be the kind of faith you absolutely know something isn't true, but you still believe it anyway. Thus, faith is reduced to some blind anecdotal act that magically suspends disbelief of reality in order to make you feel better. But you gotta wonder, is this really the kind of faith the Bible talks about? Let's look at the word again, okay? Let's refocus. The Bible refers to faith really in only one way. It's like this. Suppose I say, I have faith that my friend will repay me the $10 he owes me on Saturday because he said he would. See, there's nothing strange about that faith, and nobody would fault me for having it if they knew my friend. Because what I'm saying essentially are three things. One, my friend is real. Two, he's trustworthy. And three, which is really a subset of two, I believe one and two because I have a relationship with my friend. Now, for just a second, let's get morbid to make a critical illustration. What if my friend died on the way to give me my $10 back? He didn't come through. No matter how much faith I had in him, how real and completely trustworthy he may have been, he didn't have the power to live up to my faith. Was he really any less trustworthy or any less real? No. But the person or object on which I place my faith is an essential part of how strong my faith should be. I mean, how much faith do you have that your 2-year-old basset hound can drive your new Lexus to the bank and bring you back $1,000 in 20s? None, I hope. But now, turn that analogy of my friend and your dog toward God, who is all-powerful, all-knowing, eternal, and incapable of lying, and ask yourself this: on whom does it make the most sense to place your greatest faith? Well, I'll tell you, anyone who has a right relationship with God, and quite honestly anyone who doesn't, knows he is the only one capable of doing everything he says, the only one with the knowledge of the future, the only one who understands everything, the only one who really knows you, and the only one who has revealed through nature and his word who he is and what he's done, how much he loves you, and why he is the only completely trustworthy one there is. Got it? Good. In summary then, faith in God is always a response to truth and reality and has nothing to do with blind leaps, the USS Enterprise, or wishful thinking. Trust me.
I hope you can see that biblical faith is not blind faith. Now, let's do something here. Let's take a look at this and fill in the blank for me. In the beginning, created the heaven and the earth. Now, most of you are going to say God, but I've got to challenge you here because we live in a world that increasingly that blank is going to be filled in with something different. And many times in this culture, what I'm hearing is gas. Because Big Bang exploded, and that's how everything came to be. 14 billion years ago, all these things happened. Well, I'm going to say that in the beginning, God is accurate. But we asked this question before. Let's address it this time. If your God created everything, then who created God? So this time we want to address that. Let me show you the debunked video. And remember, they're fast-paced and animated, so put your seatbelt on. But we're going to address this claim that somebody had to make God.
You know, people misunderstand all kinds of things about the nature of God, which leads them to say interesting things like, if everything that begins needs a beginner, then so does God. Or, hey man, if every effect has to have a cause, then God has to have a cause. Or even, if God created everything, then something or someone had to create God. There it is, boom, mic drop. No mic drop. Pick it up because those statements don't merit such a thing. And here's why. Basically, we got 3 French hens, 2 hurl above the far ridge as I tear free. What? Yep, shooting them down nice and easy. 1 ultimate question, kind of spun as 3, bundled briefly by Bub because brevity bespeaks benevolence, benefiting belabored beholders. And pull! Statement et une, as no one from France would say, but I ain't French. If everything that begins needs a beginner, then so does God. And that would be a great point if God began, but the statement says everything that begins needs a beginner, not that everything needs a beginner. God didn't have a beginning, so he doesn't need a beginner. He is, as the Bible declares, eternal and everlasting. On to el statementavo de doso, which probably doesn't mean what I think it should. If every effect has a cause, then God has to have a cause. Well, again, that would be a good point if God was the effect of something, but he wasn't, because nothing caused God. He's the uncaused cause who causes all other causes. This means he's the only necessary, uncreated anything. All other things are created and contingent, therefore in need of said cause. And so we're here at La Statementanto de Finale, as once spoken by nobody from Italy or anywhere else, I imagine. If God created everything, then somebody or something had to create God. Well, that doesn't really follow because, again, God is eternal and unmade. Sorry to be repetitive, but nobody or no thing created God. And he certainly didn't create himself because that would be, well, absurd. He is the one who created all things. Colossians 1:16 puts it this way, by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. And we all actually know this just by looking around at things. That's why Romans 1:19 and 20 says, for what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. This means if you pondered the world and the universe, you'd come to the common sense conclusion, at least at minimum, an immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent, spaceless, and timeless being created the universe. Whoa, now hold on a cotton-picking minute. Why would I come to that conclusion, you might ask with fervor? Well, because we know the universe began to exist, and that means it had a cause. So then, what caused it? Well, you got 3 choices, really. You got nothing, you got an abstract, or you got a being with the aforementioned qualities. Unprovable multiverses or crystals on the backs of turtles won't do. Now, it seems to me that Billy Preston dismantles the first option when he's saying, nothing from nothing, leave nothing. Yeah, no, don't quit the day job, but what he spins is true, my brothers and sisters. You get nada from nothing because nothing is, as Aristotle asserted, the thing rocks dream of. So what about an abstract something? Say like the number 4. Well, last I checked, the number 4 can't talk, can't eat, can't think, can't do much of anything. So that leaves us with the being with the same characteristics described in the Bible that we'd expect if we never read the Bible, and that being is God, the creator and sustainer of the universe. He was not made, he was not caused, he was not created. He had no beginning, he had no end, he had no superior, he has no equal, he has no boundaries, he has no limits, he has no weakness, he's infinite, he's eternal, he's all-powerful, he's the Alpha and Omega, he's all-knowing, he's spaceless, he's timeless, he's spirit, and unlike Visa, he's everywhere. Period. Might be nice to drop that mic now. And there it is. This unfounded claim that God needs a beginner or a cause, or that somebody made God, has been, as it were, hitherto and henceforth, debunked. Adios.
I know. They're quick, they're fast, a lot of information. But if you would like to receive these for free, we want you to just text us. On your messaging software, send the message, adios, VCY, to the recipient 51555. You're going to get a form there to fill out, and you'll get all the future Debunked for free, as well as these, and Debunked TV in the future when we release those, which flesh these Debunked videos out, you're going to get those. But we're going to attack this. I wanted you to see that there is a Christian response to this question, but now we're going to go after it from the secular viewpoint. Let's let them talk, because this argument of what's the truth, God or gas, that is not the truth. Because ultimately the argument comes down to God versus nothing. Because that is the worldview, that in the beginning nothing created something to turn itself into everything. And if you think I'm not telling you the straight truth, let's bring in some smart guys here. Alexander Villinkin, let's take a listen to what he has to say.
There is one answer that appears to avoid this problem. The idea is that the universe could be spontaneously created out of nothing.
So there you go. Nothing created something. And he's not alone. Let's bring in another smart guy, Peter Atkins. Let's take a listen to what he has to say.
And it may be that our universe happens to be that happy chance of nothing transforming itself into what seems to be something that seems to persist.
So you caught that, right? Peter Atkins is telling us that it may be that our universe happens to be that happy chance of nothing transforming itself into what seems to be something. You know what? Maybe I don't know what nothing is. You know, hey, I'm not the smartest guy on the block. Let's get a definition for nothing. And so in order to get a definition for nothing, I wanted to bring in another smart guy. And this is a PhD astrophysicist, Dr. Michio Kaku. Let's let him define nothing for us so that we're all using the same terminology.
Floyd doesn't believe he can actually get his taxes done for nothing. So we brought in Dr. Michio Kaku to explain exactly what we mean by nothing.
Nothing is the absence of something. Zero is absolutely nothing.
So it costs nothing?
Well, it costs you zero, which is nothing.
Nothing. Right.
So, we now know what nothing means. And may I reveal my bias right at the very beginning here? It doesn't take a genius to know that you can't get something from nothing. But let's at least let them try and explain it. So Dr. Michio Kaku gave us our definition for nothing. Nothing is the absence of something. So now let's go to the secular world. Let's go to the big dogs. Let's go to Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss. These are two gentlemen that don't like Christians and Christianity very much, and they are going to explain to us how you get something from nothing. Now, Richard Dawkins, if you don't know, is a gentleman who has written a lot of books. I mean, a lot of books. He's probably written more books than I've read. And he really comes after Christians and Christianity. I kind of put it like this. Why would we use him as an example? Because to put it in a kind of a understandable way, he's like Gru. And so he's Gru, and so he's got all his minions. And so if Dawkins is using an argument, I'm telling you the minions are using it. And Lawrence Krauss, he's a minion. He's a Gru wannabe, but he's never going to grow up to be one. But he did write a book. He did write a book called A Universe from Nothing, Why There Is Something Rather Than Nothing. So please, imagine with me here. You've spent $35 to buy a brand new hardcover book that's come out, all right? $35. And you just find out that Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss are coming into town, and you spend $100 to get a ticket to go watch these guys speak. So you're invested in this. And here we go. We go here. Richard and Lawrence explain to us how you get something from nothing. We're going to let them teach us. Listen critically.
In the context of evolution, what something from nothing means to you?
Charles Darwin solved one of the greatest riddles that the human mind has ever solved, which is how you get something from nothing, in the sense of how you get the immense complexity and diversity and beauty and elegance of life, and perhaps above all, how you get the powerful illusion of design that life shows, starting not quite from nothing, but starting from extreme simplicity.
Now, this is a long lecture, so we've got to break this down and critically evaluate what's being taught here. So let's take this. He just told us that Charles Darwin solved how you get something from nothing. My question is this: what did Charles Darwin discover? Did he truly discover how you can get something from nothing? What is he most famous for? And people know that it's usually the finches or the turtles, the Galapagos turtles. Some have different shapes on their carapace. Some are rounded in the front, some have a U shape, depending on where they spend most of their time eating. And the finches, some had big beaks and some had little beaks. And based on climatic changes, you would get a fluctuation of populations with a lot of big beaks and a few little beaks, a little. Is that something from nothing? No. He started with birds and turtles. He ended up with birds and turtles with different features. That is not something from nothing. And don't trust me. Let me take you to another non-Christian. This is what they wrote. The theory of evolution deals with changes in populations. By the way, A population is something. This has nothing to do with getting something from nothing. So you've got to understand, there's some tools that Richard Dawkins, Lawrence Krauss, and gentlemen like this will use to try to shut us up. We talked about the mic drop in the Debunked video. Well, Charles Darwin, boom, mic drop. If you drop the Charles Darwin bomb, everybody walks away because, hey, he figured it all out. No, he did not. The laws of quantum mechanics, boom. The laws of physics, the laws of chemistry, virtual particles, boom. And everybody runs because, let's be honest, I'm the son of a professional wrestler. You think I understand quantum mechanics? Not even close, all right? But being the son of a professional wrestler, one thing I learned was how to smell a fake and a fraud from a block away. And these guys may try to scare you off with big words and intimidation. Don't be intimidated. Don't be scared. Look at it, because he goes on to write that given a starting population, changes will occur. I, as a Christian, do I believe that? Absolutely. It's what we see in the world around us. You can observe that. You start with 2 dogs, you got all kind of different looking dogs. You started with 2 birds, 2 people. That's not something from nothing. And then he says this, that starting population is an objective fact. We can see it in the fossil record. Yes, we can. In one of the other episodes, we are going to talk about exactly what the fossil record shows. But the fossil record is something, and it does not show something coming from nothing. All right? So, the powerful illusion of design that life shows. This is what Richard Dawkins said. Now, guys, why would he make that statement? Because I'm going to say to you, people have heard this before, that the devil is in the detail. That is a lie. God is in the detail. You look at anything that man made under an electron microscope, and you're going to see junk. It's junk. But you look at anything that God made under an electron microscope, it's amazing. Do you know what this is? This is the skin of a shark. Intricate. I mean, you look at this. What is that? Gears? No, that's a snowflake. And by the way, our God is so creative, he's not like just giving you one kind of snowflake. This is another type of a snowflake. And this is not some custom rim that got kicked off to the side of the road. This is an algae, a diatom. And if you got hay fever, you don't like these things. This is the reason why you have all the problems with hay fever. But let's take a look at something that man made. This is a needle. You'll never want to get another shot. Let's zoom in just a little bit on that. You think a needle is so sharp? By the way, you can get pictures of a needle that's been used 6 times and the front is blunt and turned back. You would think a needle, metal just poking into the skin wouldn't do anything. No. Guys, it looks like junk. But what God made screams design. You want evidence for God? It's all around you. Just get a telescope, get a microscope, and look at the world that we live in. And then he said this, you heard it, hold me accountable, started not quite from nothing. Hold up. We spent $35 for the hardcover book. We spent $100, then we had to drive to get there and give them time. You wrote a book, A Universe from Nothing, Why There's Something Rather Than Nothing. And in the opening statement, the guy who wrote the afterword says that it started not quite from nothing. By the way, do you think any of the people in the audience started raising their hands and saying, hey, I want a refund, man. I came here to hear how you get something from nothing, and you just told me that it didn't come from nothing. Nobody said anything. As a matter of fact, it was people worship. Don't worship people. Oh, Richard, Lawrence, they're so smart. Do not worship people. Do not worship the creation, worship the Creator. And then he said this, but started from extreme simplicity. Now, when I'm working with younger generation, I'll challenge them and can anybody give me an example of extreme simplicity? And people come up with all kinds of things. But here's the bottom line. No matter what they come up with, it's something. They're telling us that we can get something from nothing. Extreme simplicity requires that there was something there. But let's keep watching because maybe it gets better.
So, getting something from nothing, Charles Darwin gives us all confidence. Charles Darwin showed that what must have seemed the most difficult problem of getting something from nothing was soluble. He solved it, and his successors have been simply fleshing out his explanation ever since. But after Darwin, it's no longer possible for anybody, any reasonable person to say, oh, I simply can't believe you could get something so complicated as that.
Charles Darwin solved it? Charles Darwin showed it was possible to get something from nothing? No, he didn't. He did not. Do not be intimidated. We send our children to school systems that they get intimidated by professors. And you're not reasonable if you don't believe that you can get something from nothing. And we have a generation, guys, I can give you the stories. I can give you the stories of young folks going into class, day one, index cards being handed out, write Jesus on a psychology class, write down Jesus, now stand up, put it on the ground, step on it, because the rest of this class we're going to destroy one of the greatest myths that's ever been perpetuated on this planet. Guys, this is an attack. And you're not reasonable. You're the weirdo. You're the goof. And this is what is being done to this generation. And I want to teach them to challenge back and just ask good, solid questions. Excuse me, you just got done telling me that it was not nothing, that it was extreme simplicity, which, sir, is something. So why is it not reasonable, therefore, to question you on what that something was? That's a fair question. You know what's not reasonable? To not ask questions when people are giving you information that makes no sense, where you're double talking. We have to teach a generation to ask good questions. But let's keep going.
But I think you're not being fair to Darwin. I think in a sense it's something from nothing. I mean, completely nothing. In the sense that every time take humans, we weren't around, perhaps more than maybe 5 to 10 million years ago. And so, in a sense, every time a new species is created, it's something from nothing.
When I'm in a classroom or working with youth, I'll call a volunteer up and I'll be the Richard Dawkins or Lawrence Krauss guy and have them come up, and I'll ask them questions. I want you to defend your position. This is what we hear. You're not being fair to Darwin. It is something from nothing, completely nothing. 5 to 10 million years ago, there were no humans. Now there's humans. That's an example of getting something from nothing. And I'll push and I'll ask that person to give an answer. And it's a little sad, because if you can bully a little bit, and I tell them that I'm going to do this. I love these folks so much that I'm going to speak the truth to them and challenge them to think, and they know that I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But when you push them and challenge them, they get intimidated and they get quiet as a minimum. As a minimum, they become quiet. 5 to 10 million years ago, there were no humans. Now there's humans. How are you going to explain that? And very seldom can anybody give an answer. He continues on. Every time a new species is created, there's something from nothing. You know what? Instead of me answering that question for you, how about I let Richard Dawkins answer this question? You would think that this guy's a creationist. Watch.
Well, it's not from nothing, because it's from an antecedent species, and even the evolutionary process, the process that Darwin discovered, didn't start from nothing. It had to start from, well, a reasonably complicated chemical beginning, which was the first self-replicating molecule. You can't, I mean, natural selection can't get going until you have genetics, and so you've got to have genetics. And that's not a trivial problem, and it's a problem that actually hasn't yet been solved.
So you caught that. It is not something from nothing. Because when you know the evolutionary model, which, by the way, Christian parent, please don't run and hide from the evolutionary model, the evolutionary teaching. We need to know it better than the world. We need to know it warts and all. When you know it, and you know what the fossil record shows, it shows that there was something. There was a supposed common ancestor. He used antecedent species. That's a big word. A supposed common ancestor between apes and humans. So from this one thing, you got apes and you've got humans. That antecedent species is something. This is not something from nothing. And this is what Richard Dawkins says. It's not from nothing because an antecedent species is nothing. And our definition for nothing is the absence of something, and antecedent species is something. Do not be intimidated by these guys. And then he continues on. It had to start from, well, a reasonably complicated chemical beginning. By the way, did you just notice a shift here? We started off with extreme simplicity, and now we're at a reasonably complicated chemical beginning. That's a big shift. And then he also said this: you can't get going until you have genetics. In order to have genetics, you have to have something. It started from a self-replicating molecule. See, Carl, there's your example of extreme simplicity. A self-replicating molecule. Really? A self-replicating molecule is extreme simplicity? I beg to differ. But if it's so simple, why can't we make one with all of our intelligence, all of our resources? Why can't human beings make a self-replicating molecule? I made that statement and I had somebody challenge me. We have made one. Really? So I had to go do some research. I found the article. Short, sharp science, and this is what the headline says. Biologists create self-replicating RNA molecule. By the way, before we even get into the article, from the headline alone, does this teach that something came from nothing? This says biologist. That's somebody. That's something. Create. This is somebody using wisdom to make something happen. By the way, as a minimum, this supports intelligent design, as a minimum. But the article gets even better. It doesn't have a very sexy name, but TC19Z, synthesized in a lab in Cambridge, UK. Could be. Are you catching these words? Oh, in another session, we're going to really flesh that out. You have got to keep your eyes open for the could be's, may be's, might be, we think. Look, that is not observational science. That is an opinion. And science needs evidence, not opinion. Let's keep going. Could be a version of one of the first enzymes that ever existed on our planet and a clue to how life itself got started. It continues. Crucially, TC19Z can copy pieces of RNA that are almost half as long, 48%, as itself. This is one of the things that I'm always challenging a generation to do. Do not just read headlines, read the actual article, then go read the sources that they cite. The headline says, biologists create self-replicating RNA molecule, okay? The article says that they have something that can copy pieces that are almost half as long. Is this a self-replicating molecule? No, it is not. So the headline is actually misleading. If you don't read the actual articles and the sources, the headlines will deceive you. Satan doesn't play fair, and if you take anything from me, you better take that. Now, what was interesting is when I read the comments after this article, this one guy, not a Christian, he wrote this. I mean, it was very interesting rebuttal. Is this article accurately titled, Biologists Create Self-Replicating RNA Molecule, when in the penultimate paragraph, I had to look that word up. Penultimate means second to last. All right, second to last paragraph, I'm told it can only replicate half its length. Isn't that a bit like saying mechanic builds self-assembling car in Australia and then finding only half of it's being built when I get there? I could have saved my ticket money for when it could fully build. I was really annoyed. Why did I have to almost finish the article before I knew the title was wrong? How can I trust your titles ever again, New Scientist? And the answer is you can't. Because the titles do not, many times, do not bear out what the actual evidence supports. Ah, but Carl, that article's old. They have found new evidence. Okay, found another article. Here's the headline. New theoretical model explains the origins of self-replicating molecules. So we can now explain them. What are you going to do, Carl? I'm going to go read the article. This is what it says in the article. We wouldn't be here today if molecules had not made that fateful transition to self-replication. Yet, despite the fact that biochemists have spent decades searching for the specific chemical process that can explain how simple molecules could make this leap, we still don't really understand how it happened. Guys, we're intimidated by this? We're selling out the Lord Jesus Christ for this? You shouldn't. I did find this title interesting on a New Scientist article. Imagination, why we spend so much time explaining realities that don't exist. And the reason is, because if you're going to try to explain how you can get something from nothing, you're going to need a lot of imagination. But starting from extreme simplicity. Guys, remember this. Whatever example they come up with is something. You are not getting something from nothing. But let's keep going. Maybe it gets better again.
Well, in fact, actually, that's kind of interesting, because it's true that many people think that evolution has to do with the origin of life, but it's really the origin of the diversity of life.
This is big. You heard this. Evolution doesn't deal with the origin of life. I wonder why. You know why? Let me highly recommend. You need to watch this DVD. It's called Expelled. It's older now, but it is phenomenal. Ben Stein did us a favor. He interviewed the skeptics. He asked them point blank, give us your answers. And in the interview that I have to show this clip from, Michael Ruse, Ben Stein asked him point blank, simple question. How do you get life from non-life? Take a listen to the response and you'll understand why they don't want to address this issue.
How did we get from an inorganic world to the world of the cell?
Well, one popular theory is that it might have started off on the backs of crystals.
On the backs of crystals. Where'd the crystal come from? Don't worry about it, it gets better.
Molecules piggybacked on the back of crystals forming, and that this led to more and more complex. But of course, the nice thing about crystals is every now and then you get mistakes, mutations, and that this opens the way for natural selection.
You see how easy it is to get life from non-life? All you need is to get yourself a crystal, then you get a molecule on there, and as that crystal grows, sometimes it has a deformation, and then that causes the molecule to have a mutation, and that's how you get life from non-life. Look, I'm the son of a professional wrestler, so you can try and blow that smoke at me. You can't do it to Ben Stein. Guy's sharp. Watch.
But at one point there was not a living thing,
Yeah.
and then there was a living thing. How did that happen?
Well, this is I've just told you.
You know, when I show that clip many times, people are laughing. They're laughing, but we shouldn't be, because this individual is having a major impact on the younger generation, intimidating them and bullying them. And when they're in his classroom and their grade is dependent on what he thinks about them, he shuts them down. Me personally, what I just saw there reminds me of Barney Fife. Now, we have a younger generation that doesn't know who Barney Fife is, and I say mature generation, we need to bring Barney back. For those of you that aren't familiar, Barney was awesome. I just loved Andy Griffith. Barney Fife was a small town deputy and just spoke real big, but didn't have a whole lot to back it up, if you know what I'm saying. This one clip, you've got to see this, because this to me is Michael Ruse on steroids.
Now, men, there are a few things we ought to get straightened out right at the start to avoid any grief later on. Now, here at The Rock, we have two basic rules. Memorize them so that you can say them in your sleep. The first rule is, obey all rules. Secondly, do not write on the wall, as it takes a lot of work to erase writing off of a wall.
That's Michael Ruse. Talking really big, intimidating, but there's not a whole lot there. But unfortunately, you see Gomer there? Look at the look on his face. He's like so impressed. Don't be a Gomer. Question. Dig. Don't let these guys intimidate you. Let's keep listening.
And I don't see any reason why you shouldn't go from very simple to more and more complex to more and more complex.
I don't either, but I don't know how you get from mud to a living cell. That's my question.
Yes, well, I've told you.
I think it was on the
try
back
one
of
more
crystals.
time.
On the backs of crystals.
Of the backs of crystals is at least one hypothesis, yes.
So that's your theory, and you think that is more likely and less far-fetched than intelligent design?
I think it is.
We do not have an evidence problem. We have an interpretation of evidence problem, and that interpretation is going to be based on your worldview. And if you believe that there's a God, you're going to explain the evidence completely and totally differently than someone who says that there is no God. Don't be intimidated.
Yes.
And in fact, the famous final paragraph of his book, it basically tries to state that.
Yes. No, you have to start from agenetics, and that's one of the big gaps in our knowledge at the moment. Nobody knows how that started. The laws of chemistry somehow had to give rise to a self-replicating molecule. Once you've got that, at least a sufficiently accurately self-replicating molecule, then evolution takes off.
Very simple. You just got to start with genetics, which, by the way, requires something. And then, here we go, here's the big mic drops. The laws of chemistry gave rise to self-replicating molecules. Carl, how do we deal with that? I mean, the laws of quantum mechanics, the laws, we don't understand all that. Neither do I, but I understand this. These are just a few of the books containing the laws in California. There's lots and lots of laws just in the state of California alone. So think about this. How many jails, penitentiaries did those laws create in California? I mean, how many? I mean, there's lots of jails and penitentiaries. How many were created by those laws? And the answer is none. 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 Zero. Laws don't create. Don't trust me. Let me bring in a non-Christian here, and he says this about laws. Laws are descriptions, often mathematical descriptions of natural phenomena. For example, Newton's law of gravity or Mendel's law of independent assortment. These laws simply describe the observation not how or why they work. Laws do not create. Don't be intimidated. They want to drop all the laws stuff at you. Doesn't matter. Laws of chemistry didn't create anything. It describes it. It doesn't create it.
And what we've learned is remarkably this question, which is, in the sense of cosmology, in my mind, the last bastion of those people who feel there must be a creator, is the fact that it is plausible, based on everything we now know, that a universe could come from nothing. Now, that doesn't mean it did come from nothing any more than Darwin's argument implied that life absolutely originated by chemistry. We don't know that yet. Similarly, we can't prove that the universe arose from nothing, but the discoveries in physics and cosmology have led us to realize that it's increasingly plausible, and I find that remarkable and worth celebrating.
Did you catch that? We spent our $35 for the book. We spent our $100 to get the ticket. We got ourselves there to hear how you get something from nothing, and this is what we get. It is plausible that a universe could come from nothing. Plausible? Do you know what the definition for plausible is? I did. I looked up the definition. And it says this. You're going to love this. Possibly true, believable, or realistic. Hold up. If something is possibly true, then it is also possibly not true? A fuller definition for plausible says this: a superficially fair, reasonable, or valuable, but often specious. Let me say that again. Superficially fair, reasonable, or valuable, but often specious. What does specious mean? I looked it up because, I'd looked it up before this, because of a Bible verse. Think of this. It says in 2 Corinthians 11:3, but I fear lest by any means as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety. That word subtlety is interesting. I had looked that word up before when I was doing some study, and subtlety means a specious or false knowledge. Specious. What's specious mean? Something that looks good, but isn't. And that's exactly what we're getting from these guys. They may sound good, they may look good, it may be intimidating, but don't be intimidating because it's not good. This is what he said. That doesn't mean that it did come from nothing. Then why are we jamming this down an entire generation's throat, starting with me and even before me? This was being taught as dogmatic science, but they don't know. Any more than Darwin's argument implied that life absolutely originated by chemistry. We don't know that yet. Then why are we jamming it down a generation's throat? But then, look, you want to watch the whole 2-hour thing, you go for it. This was the line that said, I'm done. This is what he said. Similarly, we can't prove that the universe arose from nothing. Then why did you sell the book? Remember, we started off with science without physical evidence is opinion, and opinion is not science, even if it's the opinion of a scientist. So he is jamming his opinion down our throat. Why are we intimidated by it? I'm not. I look at Romans 1:22 and it says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Now I know what you might be thinking, but Carl, the virtual particle thing, we hear that all the time. Virtual particles, they pop into and out of existence from nothing. How do we explain that? How do we deal with that? Well, here's what I did. Started doing some research, and I found an expert on virtual particles. And let's read what he has to say. I mean, this is a smart guy, attended Princeton, PhD at Stanford. This is an article that he wrote explaining virtual particles, and it's understandable. The term virtual particle is an endlessly confusing and confused subject for the layperson and even for the non-expert scientist. He continues, the best way to approach this concept, I believe, is to forget you ever saw the word particle in the term. A virtual particle is not a particle at all. So what is it? Well, he continues. It refers precisely to a disturbance in a field that is not a particle. What is it? A particle is a nice regular ripple in a field, one that can travel smoothly and effortlessly through space, like a clear tone of a bell moving through the air. A virtual particle generally is a disturbance in a field that will never be found on its own, but instead is something that is caused by the presence of other particles, often of other fields. So when somebody tells you that virtual particles just pop into and out of existence from nothing, that's not true. This is the leading expert on them. He even drew a picture that I could understand. This is great. What's a virtual particle? You have two electrons that get within a certain proximity of each other, and when they do, there's a ripple that goes out. That ripple is the virtual particle. But guess what? When those electrons move on and they're no longer close to each other, virtual particle disappears. So, is that an example of getting something from nothing? No, it is not. So how do we deal with this stuff? Look, I don't think we have to be jerks. I'm going to introduce you to a comedian here, and I haven't watched any of his stuff, to be very honest with you. He just seems grumpy anymore. But Stephen Colbert, back when this book was written, had Lawrence Krauss on his show at that time. This should be a training manual on how to ask questions. You got to see this.
Welcome back, everybody. My guest tonight is a cosmologist whose new book is about why there is something instead of nothing. I'm guessing because his publisher gave him a deadline. Please welcome Lawrence Krauss. Hey, Dr. Krauss, thanks so much for coming on. All right, sir. Let's get the CV out here, because it is not unimpressive.
Thank you.
Okay, you are a cosmologist.
That's not a cosmetologist.
Not a cosmetologist. Okay, because I was going to ask you for a mani-pedi. Okay. A theoretical physicist. You're the director of Origins Project at Arizona State University. The new book is called A Universe from Nothing: Why There Is Something Rather Than Nothing. A book about the ultimate question. Okay, doctor. Sweep away thousands of years of mystery and awe at creation that let the greatest minds in civilizations all over the world to lead to one point: a single divine loving creator. Destroy it. Why is there something instead of nothing?
It's really easy, because nothing's unstable. And in fact, there's no evidence for any deity. Everything we know about the laws of physics, which are remarkable and have changed everything about the way we think about the universe, what nothing is and what something is. This table here is mostly empty space.
This table cost me $500. Well, you tell me I got ripped off? Well, no, wait, let's go back a second, okay? Nothing is unstable. What do you mean that nothing is unstable? Nothingness is nothingness.
Well, the physics has changed what we mean by nothing. In fact, nothing is a empty space, is a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles popping in and out of existence
wait,
so
no,
fast.
that's not nothing. That's something. Why are those virtual particles there?
Because of the laws of quantum mechanics. And they tell us that even though you can try and count and see what's in there in empty space, you'll see nothing. But in fact, one of the biggest mysteries, and the reason I wrote the book, one of the greatest discoveries of the last 50 years is that, in fact, empty space weighs something.
Empty space weighs something.
In fact, it's the dominant stuff in the universe. Nothing is almost everything.
I am never going to lose those last 5 pounds.
Never. And in fact, it's worse because, in fact, unlike normal stuff, you may have learned in high school that gravity sucks, but in fact, it doesn't. With empty space, it's repulsive. And that empty space is forcing the universe to expand ever faster, faster and faster.
So the nothingness is forcing us apart.
It's forcing us apart. Well, we're not going to be forced apart, but the galaxies are.
Okay, you say you haven't been rubbing any of that baby shampoo on your head, have you? With the THC in it?
Well,
no?
I'm no
You're
comment.
clean?
No comment.
You're clean? Leave me a hair sample. We'll check it later. All right. So, okay, you say there are 3 different types of nothing.
That's right.
What are the 3? I didn't know there was such a variety. A sampler platter of
I would have thought
nothing.
You'd be an expert on it. But
on
in any
nothingness?
Case,
Yes.
In any case, there are 3 different kinds of nothing. First, empty space, which I'd say is probably the nothing of the Bible, an eternal, dark, empty void.
Do you mean like a true hard vacuum? That would be, that's nothingness you're talking about?
Most people would have thought that would be nothing.
That's what I think nothing is.
And then I
also,
tell you that...
Baltimore.
But then if I tell you that that kind of nothing actually is unstable, if you wait long enough, that kind of nothing will always produce particles.
Well,
it will always produce something.
But
It will.
by saying that it will,
if you wait long enough, the laws of quantum mechanics tell us that particles will burp out of empty space and eventually fill up a universe. It's really remarkable.
That, to me, that sounds like the empty space may be empty to us, but it is some sort of sheath or membrane between us and some other reality.
No, there's nothing. Well, there's absolutely nothing there until there's something.
What's the second type of nothing?
Okay, well then if you don't buy that, then I could say, well, you might say, well, that's not nothing because there's space.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out if you apply quantum mechanics to gravity, then in fact space itself becomes dynamical, and universes, spaces themselves and time can pop into existence where there was none before.
So in
fact,
in
space
some
itself,
theoretical end space, before the moment of creation, there can be no time and no space and no energy?
And no energy. Zero
and then
energy.
suddenly, from nowhere and from nothing, comes something and somewhere.
And all sorts of stuff, and it sounds like the ultimate free lunch, and
yes,
it is.
It is.
It is, and it really, and what's remarkable is it's possible without any supernatural shenanigans. And
but listen, stop with that.
Why?
Why is what you're doing, whatever this is? Because obviously, because I am not in the priesthood, I can't understand the scrawls on the blackboards you people down at where are you?
Well, that's why I wrote the book, so you could.
Where are you? You're Arizona State.
Arizona State.
Okay, you priests of theoretical physics, you can explain to each other what you mean with your language of math, and I have to take that on faith.
No, in fact, you should be skeptical.
I am.
And in fact, you should. I know. And that's why you should. That's why I tried to provide the arguments in the book.
But I will never read it. So why other people should? You should buy it.
Buying it is important.
Buying it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. But why does what you're saying have to be an attack on my God?
It doesn't have to be an attack.
But that's all you've done. You've attacked my God for the last 6 minutes.
No. You have. All I've said is you don't need him.
That's an attack.
No.
Of course, we are here to love God and serve God.
As we understand it, we've changed our minds about the universe. We've learned that the universe is more remarkable than anything we ever thought before. And in fact, changing your mind and in fact being wrong is wonderful. You should try it sometime. It's really amazing. It means that the fact that the universe is more remarkable than the fairy tales that were talked about by Bronze Age literate peasants before we knew the Earth orbited the Sun.
You're not attacking at all, but go ahead.
No, but I mean,
Leslie, so you say, so you believe there's no God?
I don't even use the word believe. The point is there is
no God.
There's no need for God.
Is there God? Is there God?
It's
what would you say?
There's no evidence for God.
Okay.
There's no evidence for God.
So let me ask something. If there is no God, okay, if there is no thing called God, if he is nothing, can't something come from him? Lawrence Krauss, thank you so much. Lawrence Krauss, the universe from God. We'll be right back.
There's a reason I show that, and it's because I want people to see how bankrupt their position really is. Let them speak for himself. The only way that they can get something from nothing is to redefine nothing, 3 different types of nothing, assign laws to do things that they can't do. Look, Scripture tells us in 1 Corinthians 1:27, but God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. Now you must be thinking, Carl, they can't make these claims that something can come from nothing if there's no evidence. So there must be evidence. I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's go back to our original smart guy. Remember, this is what he told us. He said that the universe could be spontaneously created out of nothing. Let's let him tell us what the evidence is to support it.
Of course, if you ask, is there evidence that the universe began by this spontaneous nucleation out of nothing, I don't think we can produce any evidence for that.
So that means they have faith, which is a blind faith. The next time you feel like you're being attacked or intimidated because, well, you don't have any evidence for your faith, well, as a minimum, you can say this: I have just as much I have just as much evidence for God as you have for something creating nothing. We both have faith. Faith isn't the problem. It's what you're putting your faith in. Their position has nothing to support it. Ours does. So remember, when you fill in the blank in the beginning, at least make an informed decision, because ultimately the argument comes down to God versus nothing. And before you sell out for nothing, don't do it. But you know, we may not be able to get something from nothing, but we can get nothing from something. And if you bought that book, that's exactly what you got. I'm Carl Kerby with Reasons for Hope, and I hope to see you next time.